But the first hour of this movie is absurd with the amount of setup and the constant flashbacks, which I mean, just should have been cut from the movie. Every single one of those flashbacks should have been cut from the movie, just whole cloth, because it makes you feel like the studio thinks you're an idiot. Like the audience is an idiot. Like that you can't remember these things that happened, in a movie that came out like 2 years ago, or you can't remember the most iconic scene in the Mission Impossible franchise, the scene in which, Ethan Hunt, is scaling into that CIA black site. That is the most iconic scene in the entire franchise, and the studio is sending the signal that, like, we need to show this in a flashback because they just think you're an idiot, and I hated it. I hated every single flashback. Welcome to Theater and Stream, a film podcast. I am Matt, that is Chuck, and this is episode 68. I need you to trust me one last time. Those are the words that Ethan Hunt says to his team, but he's also talking to us, the audience. Trust me one last time. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. It is the 8th and presumably final film in the 3-decade-long spanning franchise. Cruise and McQuarrie, they're bringing this thing in for a landing. The question is it all smooth sailing, or do they crash and burn? All I'm going to say is that today we're going to be talking about the best spy movie of the year, and it is not Mission Impossible. But speaking of that, we've got a full watch list. We're going to be talking about all the things coming out of the Cannes Film Festival 2025, and we're going to end the show with the Mentionables. But one final note, before we get into the meat of things, Chuck and I, we have reviewed every single Mission Impossible movie on this very show, so do go back and watch those episodes. I'll be sure to link them in the episode description, but yeah, we have 4 episodes devoted to all of the previous Mission Impossible movies, 1 through 7. And so yeah, go and watch those, please. Chuck, anything else you want to say about that?
I like in the lead up to this, instead of rewatching the actual movies, I went back and like watched those episodes because I just wanted to recollect like what our takeaways were, and because I needed to contextualize the experience I was going to have a little bit, like in that way. I wanted to know where they all stacked up, what were the virtues that we felt that every Mission Impossible movie needed to represent, because like we were ahead of the curve. Everybody else is doing their like YouTube retrospectives on every single movie, and some of them I'm finding kind of interesting because they're actually digging into the production, like story behind each one. And I guess like we had kind of dug into that a little bit, but there's one channel in particular whose name I can't remember. I can't plug you. I'm sorry, but it was very interesting, especially on like the first 2, just how chaotic and kind of insane they were, and just like the bullshit that they had to deal with, like the Czechoslovakian government, like the post-Soviet government, where they shoot the like that opening like gala sequence, because every one of these movies has to have a fine high society gala in it. You know what I mean? To just like breezily walk through while like you're trying to like dismantle an atomic bomb or something. And in that one, they were going to use this palace in Prague, and the government were like still used to the Soviet way of doing things. And they initially made a deal for like $2,000 a day to shoot that sequence. And then they were like, it's going to be like $50,000 a day. And then the studio were like, you can't fucking do that. De Palma's like, are you kidding me? We're going to have to shoot everything in like a single day. It's not possible. And like one of the, his producing partner, Cruise's producing partner, Wagner, I think is her name, or was her name. She like sat down with like these like post-Soviet, like mob bosses essentially who were running the country, and she was just like, "Gentlemen, if you make it easy for us, we'll get everyone to come here." And they told her to pound sand. And like something I didn't know, George Lucas was for some reason a background character in the whole story of how Mission Impossible 1 happened, which is not something I was aware of. So I am going to find that channel again. I will put that information in the description as well, because it is worth getting into. If you are a cruise head like we are, like if you want to get the skinny on how we got to Mission Impossible 8, The Final Reckoning, you can kind of go on that journey. But right now, in France, of all places, on, is this on the Riviera, Cannes, or is that like a separate part of France?
No, I believe it's the same. Yeah, it's right
Yeah,
on the water there. Yep.
the place where you have yacht parties with orgies and like all kinds of booze and drugs. You get covered up if your dress isn't like is too revealing. But that's Cannes 2025, baby. And this seems like a very arty farty high art kind of year, but I'm here for it based on the descriptions of the movies that we're getting. What's caught your eye thus far?
Yeah, I there have been a number of movies that this is what I would consider probably a very good year as far as these films go, and not a lot of blockbusters out there. Usually you get three or four studios that bring their blockbuster to have their premiere at Cannes, just to drum up some buzz. Not a lot of that this year. It's just a lot of
No Kung
these
Fu
smaller
Pandas.
movies.
Nothing like
Yeah,
that.
no,
Yeah.
yeah, and so yeah, it's what I would consider a good year, and so it makes it a lot more exciting, for us plebeians to know what movies we'll be seeing in the next 2 to 6 months. And so the one that kind of caught my eye, I would say is, uh, I guess how's it pronounced? Is it uh, Nouvelle Vague or
Nouvelle
Nouveau
Vague,
Vague?
or yeah,
Yeah, Nouveau Vague.
I'm not French. Yeah.
Um, but this is the new Linklater movie, Richard Linklater movie, and this is, I believe, it is all about the making of Goddard's Breathless. So I mean, of course, it's going to premiere at Cannes, and of course, they're going to love it. But the
Mm-hmm.
thing that I love about this is I don't know if you've seen any of the video footage from right after the movie like finished, and everybody was up doing their applause. The video of Quentin Tarantino as absolutely jazzed about this movie as he is. It's so awesome. I just love anything that can get Quentin Tarantino this excited about a movie. I'm just immediately ready for it. It's funny because you can tell he was sat near Linklater, and he's trying to like reach he's trying to reach over the seat and like talk to Linklater like all about the movie, like get his like full in-depth like thoughts, and Linklater's just like trying to breathe everything in. It's just a hilarious video. Go and watch that if you haven't.
I'm
But
gonna
yeah,
try and
this
find that.
this has caught my eye. I mean, I like the stuff Linklater's been doing recently, but I would consider a lot of the stuff he's been doing kind of like flights of fancy, where it's just sort of like Hitman and Everybody Wants Some. These are all good movies, but I want Linklater to like get back into like the shit of things, like filmmaker Linklater, and this seems to be his sort of return to that, the return to sort of his arty fartiness, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. And so yeah, that one caught my eye. But yeah, what about you? What strikes your fancy?
Well, I'm really excited for Julia Ducournau's next movie, Alpha. Like a virus that turns people into marble. Like, what kind of a statement could this movie possibly be trying to make? Like I'm still deciphering, what Titan was about. So I'm looking forward to that. But the Pillion, that's another one that it's a BDSM biker movie, the gay biker movie with Alexander Skarsgård and Harry Melling. That looks really interesting. And Slaus and Wreck, a documentary that really, I'm like, it's I love when you get a a topic that's had some time to cook, as opposed to, oh yes, we're just going to put out something that has immediacy and importance, when it comes to documentaries. Those just feel very, I guess, just like constructed, and like they're polemics with a purpose, and that's fine. But they lose their value instantly when the moment passes. And with something like this, because it's it tells this like insider look at this weird free acting school that Shia LaBeouf, had in New York City around the time of the "He Will Not Divide Us" era of his career, and apparently he misbehaves, and now he is a very different person. Seemingly, he got accused of domestic violence. He made that like really strange. I call it strange because it's a political, religious movie, kind of like about the Marxism in the life of Padre Pio, Saint Padre Pio, who was my grandmother's favorite saint. And like the religious world embrace, like the Catholic world, I should say, embraced that movie a great deal. And I'm like, this is the guy that did fucking Bad Lieutenant. This is the guy that made a movie about Paolini or Pasolini, whatever his name is, the Salo guy. And you're telling me that now he is like being heralded by like Dakota Catholic Action? What is going on? You know what I mean? So like, and he became Catholic because he method acted his way into being Catholic in that, because he made that movie. And I wanted to see the like what's the demarcation point here. So I don't know. I'm fascinated by that one. But there another thing that came up from this, and that I think happened before, like, recently, in terms of the festival. Like, we didn't have it in the doc, but there is a Dogma 25 document that has been signed by a bunch of filmmakers with the blessing of Winterberg and von Trier to make a Dogma 95 for the 21st century. And I think that's very cool. And I look forward to seeing what comes from that.
Yeah, I did see that. They brought it out on, like, when they were walking the red carpet. I think they brought it out like and like showed it, basically posed for like photos with it and stuff. So yeah, that's definitely on the radar. And yeah, I mean, while we're talking about sort of off-screen factors for the festival, you had already kind of mentioned it, but I think it's worth mentioning the sort of things that have overshadowed these movies, as good of a year as it is. And you had mentioned the weird new like prudish dress code, which I think is hilarious, because essentially what they have said is that we no nudity, no like excessive cleavage, no, what did they say? No implied nudity, no what they call voluminous gowns you cannot wear. And so yeah, that was very funny, because to the mirth of fashionistas everywhere, was always seen as kind of like the more fashionable festivals. And so yeah, in other words, they're basically like, we want you to focus on the movies, not on Jennifer Lawrence's huge postpartum tits. And so
Yeah.
that's what we're gonna do. And then in addition to that, the other thing that I kind of wanted to mention is I've loved seeing this year. There's kind of been a emphasis on Middle Eastern filmmakers, which is really, really great to see. You have the return of Jafar Panahi. He was just released from prison in Iran, and then immediately after he was released from prison, he filmed a movie in secret in Iran and then fled the country. And so that is awesome to see. And so we've been seeing a lot of that this year, and I love seeing that. But what I don't love seeing is the sort of this large financial presence of countries like Saudi Arabia, where there's been an uptick in them sort of forcing themselves into various entertainment sectors through sheer force of dollars.
Yeah, yeah,
Like golf and tennis and video games, and I think they also like literally bought with what they call their sovereign wealth fund. They literally bought Pokemon Go, and so like
really?
there's sort of yeah, like the Saudi Arabian government owns Pokemon Go now, and so
That's crazy.
that is sort of strange. And so there's been a lot of that too in Cannes. A lot of people coming in and sort of scooping up these movies on behalf of uh, the Saudi Wealth Fund is what it's called. And so yeah, not something that I really want to see. And unfortunately, I think it is a side effect of what we talked about last time we met with Hollywood is kind of tightening the belt, and everybody's trying to figure out a way to stop that, whether it be Tom Cruise and his movies or John Voight and his plan to save Hollywood. And so
Ironic. Ironic considering the Mission Impossible connection between those two men.
yeah, true.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's like this is what happens when, these other entities sort of jump in to fill the gaps when Hollywood won't, because Hollywood's not sending their studio execs, because that's usually what they would do is they would send studio execs to Cannes to sort of buy up all these movies. And that's really happening a lot less this year. And so I kind of wanted to draw attention to that a
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah.
and it's interesting because if our nation's policies or economic policies take the heart of global filmmaking out of global film, someone's going to step into that void, whether we like it or not. And it's going to have an influence in like how, I guess, yeah, and that's going to be the interesting thing, because is the Saudi wealth fund or like whoever is doing it, are they going to dictate their mores on film? Are they going to be like Harvey Weinstein being like, you need to take that out, that
Mhm.
kind of a thing? And I hope not, because I think they're maybe astute enough to know that they just need to capture these elements of global entertainment just for the sake of the money behind it and the cachet behind it, not so much on pushing their own ideologies or belief systems on the rest of the world. Like that would be where the rejection would instantly occur for a lot of parts of the world, I would say. But then again, maybe not in Europe, given the immigration from the Middle East that has happened in that continent. Like there's a lot more mosques in the UK, today than there ever were like 50, 60 years ago. And maybe that's not outside the realm of possibility. That there's enough of a population to cater to in that kind of a way. But I don't think that we're going to be seeing, mandatory burqas at the Cannes Film Festival anytime soon or anything like that. I'm not. We'll just have to see, because we don't even really know what's going to happen here. Everyone's just being cautious, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. And I guess one last point. As we're sort of filming this on Saturday morning, the Palme d'Or is actually about to be awarded in probably about 2 hours here. And the sort of front runner for that, just to kind of put it out there before it happens, is this film called Sentimental Value, which is the movie from the director and writer of The Worst Person in the World, sort of reteaming. And this was the movie, of course, that got the biggest stand ovation, which lasted 15 minutes. But this does sound interesting to me. It kind of sounds like that May December movie that we got
Yeah.
a couple years ago, where it's about it stars Stellan Skarsgård as a director who is also a father, and he is reuniting with his estranged daughters. and he wants to cast them in a film that he is making about their lives. And one of the daughters accepts the role as herself in this movie, and the other one rejects it. And so he brings in a young American actress played by Elle Fanning to play the role of the other daughter. And so that's what this movie is kind of about, is the making of this movie. And so that sounds
Interesting.
pretty interesting to me. And we'll see if that actually takes home the top prize. But yeah, looking forward to that one too.
And yeah, it's okay. So that explains, okay, because I had just seen a random image of Elle Fanning wearing a Joachim Trier summer shirt, which is
Oh yeah.
which is a Charlie XCX thing. Because at Coachella she just had these random flashes. Because it was Brat Summer last year, last summer, and this summer
Yep.
she just like highlighted all of these like artists or performers, like including what's his fucking name? I can't believe I'm blanking on his name. The guy that did Enter the Void and like
Oh, Gaspar No.
yeah, Gaspar No Summer. I'm like, I had no idea you were so cultured, Charlie. Like this is crazy, like. But yeah, so that was at Coachella, and now the meme continues. But we'll see. Maybe this will be
Yeah.
his summer. Yeah, so that's Can. We love it. We love kind of keeping our eye on it, and it's always interesting seeing who has who in like because like there are some YouTuber like movie players out there who I think are like, I don't know. I assume they're marginal in terms of like like their level of subscribers, how many views they typically get on their videos, and it is blowing my mind how many of them are there, like going to screenings, and like
Oh sure.
and and I'm just like, maybe I miss like underestimating how much money that they're able to make to afford to do that, or like like who is paying them to be there is the other question. But yeah, we'll keep our eye on that. We're
Hmm.
moving on to the watch list. I'm coming back, like because to wrap up Andor. Yeah, I reviewed it in our the first like chunk, the main chunk of the season. I reviewed last time, like we had an episode, and then I got to see the last three of the season of the show itself. And then after I watched it, I watched Rogue One, as one naturally does, because you kind of want to have the actual finale. The joke, for a while, amongst TV fans was 3 seasons in a movie, 2 seasons in a movie. Like honestly, kind of works better. As much as I was griping about how like they're just giving us this weird disjointed year-long gap between segments, like things just didn't feel like they flowed very well. By the time you get to the Gorman massacre, by the time you get to these last 3 episodes, which are just tense and intimate and just extreme in how they put the sensibilities and the virtues of the show at the forefront, the just making it very grounded, making it like very like stayed in how it is living in this like high space fantasy opera world. Like there's no force users, you don't see a single fucking lightsaber in this whole show by the end of it, and it just stays so true to itself by the end. And my ultimate takeaway is that it completely recontextualizes Rogue One. It makes Rogue One even better, in my view. I know that like some people are nitpicking certain scenes from Rogue One that are like seemingly retconned, but I think those people just, I don't know, like they're just not actually watching the show, because
Yeah.
there's a particular moment in Rogue One where like they're in where they get grabbed by Saw Gerrera's team and they get thrown in a jail, and someone makes the comment, "Oh, I've been in a jail before," and then Andor is just casually and like kind of like deadpanningly says, "Oh, this is the first time for me." as he's like breaking out his lock picking kit. It's like they're not even paying attention to the like what he's doing while he's saying that. Because it's like, yeah, this is a guy who's always honest and forthright. No, this dude is a fucking operative. He lies and he murders, for the sake of his cause. And like that character makes so much more sense, I guess. Like having these 2 seasons of context behind him and everything that he went through. And it makes that ending all the more devastating. And what people view as like a loose, like the biggest loose thread that people have like caught on to is, and I'm going to spoil this, he never finds his sister. He never, has that closure. But that's the fucking point. Like his sister is representative of every single person he is able to save along the way. All the people he's able to find, everybody that he's like able to, rescue from peril, when he does so by any means necessary, like they represent his sister. And ultimately, like the people that he does love, like Bix, that is who he does everything for. It's like like whatever, connections and that he does have with people that he truly loves and cares about. Like that's where that's what this show is all about. The ultimate sacrifices. And like the character of Luthen Rail gets a great send off. Characters like Clea become honestly one of the more important people in the whole show, and it just left me wanting more. Obviously I want more, and what they need to do, this is my pitch, we need to just pick up right where Rogue One left off, have Gilroy do the Battle of Yavin from the perspective of anybody else but that main cast from A New Hope. Have them literally just be blurry figures in the background. I want Wedge Antilles. Give me Antilles, the series. And I want to see Battle of Yavin and like the fallout of that. In fact, just give us the whole original trilogy from this background remove. And I think we can save Star Wars by making it not be about the mythic aspect of it. Strangely, but like it is so interesting, and they have such a grasp of like actually making the context feel important and feel relevant, for any and all time. Because like there's a lot of people who are looking at this show and saying, oh, it's saying something about us right now. And I appreciate the fact that Gilroy was like, no, we're not doing that. If you are latching on to that, and feeling some validation, that wasn't my purpose. My purpose is like to explore political and like the geopolitical realities we do face in this world with authoritarianism and war, sure. And if that's rhyming with real life right now, that should make you concerned about the real world a little bit more than this fantasy one, which is not something Star Wars, like in its original, incarnation ever should have done. But what I love about this season of Andor in particular, just to kind of close on it, is that it is making even the hating grifters of the world admit that they loved it. Like Critical Drinker and like Neurotic in particular, who are like a part of that milieu, both are just like, oh no, this was awesome. This was so good. Like this is the best Star Wars we've had since the original trilogy or something like that. And they're right. And I'm glad that they admitted that, because like this is probably some of the best TV we've had recently, in general, like this, the last like 5 years or so. And we should be ever grateful that they made it. And it maybe would be better if they didn't take my advice, leave this as the artifact that it is and the testament that it is. Because as we all know, too much of a good thing can go real wrong very quickly, especially if people are high on their own supply a little bit. So if you haven't watched Andor, fucking do it. You know, there's not much else out there right now that I think can really, be worthy of the time.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that it's great. I still have to watch the whole thing or the whole second season. So which I fully intend to do because I loved Rogue One. I maintain that Rogue One is like the best thing that, has happened in the like Disney era of Star Wars besides there was that first comic book that they did like immediately after they got a hold of Star Wars that is just fantastic. That first like 24 or so issues of the Star Wars comic that they rebooted, just fantastic. But Rogue One is also fantastic, and it was before they had like the iron grip on Star Wars because you could still sort of like, you know, all the props in the world to Tony Gilroy and it's Gareth Edwards was the one, or is it
Yeah,
Evans? I can never tell
it's
the difference
Edwards.
between the
It's
two.
Edwards.
Edwards.
Yeah,
Yeah, Edwards,
Evans is the
the
raid
raid
guy.
guy.
Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, he got kicked off that movie, off Rogue One, but he still did a ton with that movie beforehand. He was fighting tooth and nail to get his way. And then he eventually just got booted off the movie. But him, in combination with Tony Gilroy, just made Rogue One into something special before Disney had their iron grip around the franchise. But yeah, really looking forward to it, to watching this.
and like I alluded to, Rogue One is like what you said about it. It's even more true now. Because you, like, all because it's not just Andor. Like Krennic is a lot more interesting now,
Yeah.
and like because the how the character is in Andor, and because like he's so like confident, and like and he's around characters that are below him in rank most often, so you just like see like the like how like arrogant and like domineering he is, and then to see like because then once like the secret gets out, and the rebellion kind of and everything's falling apart, and like because all he wants is the validation of the emperor, and he's
Hmm.
never gonna get it because like even though he built the damn thing, he fucked up, and and everything, and like in the perfect plan of the all-powerful people that he's trying to please, he'll never get it. And and because apparently there's a deleted scene from Rogue One that got cut of Krennic like walking like in the sand and the like the shallows, amidst the battlefield on, God, what's that planet called, on Scarif, that and
Yeah.
it's right before the death ray blast comes in and like nukes the whole thing. And I wish they would have kept that in there because like that's one thing that's missing, is as far as that goes. It's like he doesn't have his like final moment of despair that the character deserves. But yeah, you gotta watch it. It's excellent. It's excellent. And moving on to your entry, and I guess kind of mine too, but we have a new volume of Love, Death, and Robots, which is really experimental this time around as far as the different art styles and mediums that they're doing. But yeah, like what was your takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll start off by saying, you can blaze through this entire season in just about an hour. So, just go ahead and do that. Like, for the most part, they're all worth watching, if for nothing else, just the visuals. But, that being said, I think this is probably like the weakest overall batch of these episodes we've gotten. And I mean, that's not really saying a whole lot because there's nothing tying any of these together. It's not like they flow into each other. So, the batches are just kind of incidental because they all have nothing to do with each other. But there's only really like two outright stinkers, I think, in batch of episodes, and that would, to me anyways, be the one called Golgotha, which is the weird sort of live action one that has like CGI characters, and that's kind of the extent of the animation. That one didn't really hit with me. The comedy in that one didn't really hit. And then I don't know. The other one is Smart Appliance Stupid Owners, or Smart Appliances Stupid Owners, which to me kind of read like a bad SNL sketch that goes on for too long, where it's just a bunch of household appliances complaining about, the jobs they have to do. Um, but yeah, I mean, other than that, there's two, maybe three, that are absolutely worth watching to me. One is called 400 Boys, which is written by Half-Life writer Mark Laidlaw, which is really, really just visually interesting and really just kind of out there. And you don't really know 100% what's going on, but you can kind of infer through various elements. And then the other one is How Zeke Got His Religion, or Got Religion, which is basically, for all intents and purposes, just a Hellboy short.
Ah,
The animation style, it's not officially Hellboy, but the animation style and just the subject matter just screams Hellboy, like the Nazi experiments and stuff like that. And so really liked those two especially. But I don't know, there's nothing really transcendent about any this season. There aren't any episodes that are going to stick with me like there have been in previous seasons, like, ones that I would revisit or ones that I think about from time to time, like Yabaro. That one is the one that, everybody loves, and I would count myself as part of those people. And then also for me, I don't know if you remember this one, but there was one called Zima Blue, from one of the first seasons that is just fantastic. And that one has really stuck with me over the years. But yeah, it's worth watching though. Like I said, you can blaze through these in like an hour, so it's just watch them. And I don't know, what did you, of the ones that you watched, what did you like? What did you dislike?
see, I watched Golgotha, and I liked it up until I realized it was only like 5 minutes long, and like it
Mhm.
wasn't gonna really give me much, and its punchline is just utterly predictable. Like
Mhm.
so like that one was really disappointing, but I did, just because like like there is some limited continuity from volume to volume, and we finally get the story behind the feline robot alliance that destroyed humanity, from
Oh
the
yeah.
episodes where where it's just those robots walking around Earth trying to figure out what the hell happened here. Like they're basically just being paleontologists or archaeologists of whatever happened to Earth. And it all comes down to a cat voiced by Chris Parnell named Dingleberry Jones, which got a guffaw out of me. But I loved 400 Boys. That one was rad, because like
Mhm.
I'm a big Laidlaw fan. And I'm glad that some of his other work is getting at least put out there, because I haven't read any of his books, but now I kind of want to, and like his short stories. I think like it's the is it the seventh mandala or something like that, whichever, because you can see his books in Half-Life 1 in someone's locker. Like that's
Oh
just a
really?
weird
Okay.
Easter egg that they did. And so I've always been fascinated but never pulled the trigger on it. But those were the I need to like fully watch all of it. They're just a little too intense for the children, and it's kind of
Sure.
difficult to carve out the time for that. Because like I had 400 Boys on, and then like and and Luca was sitting next to me, and then once the giant killer babies showed up, I just looked over at him, and then he looked at me, and I was like, okay, yeah, let's put something else on. Oh man.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, it like I said, yeah, it's definitely worth watching. And I did, yeah. The three robots, I think that's what the ones that have the continuity are called, like three robots. And I did like that connection. Those three robot shorts from the previous seasons are really good too. And um And then also the I can't remember what it's called, but the like miniatures one where it's like a
Yeah,
zombie apocalypse
and an
that
alien
they've also
invasion
been
one. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, they've been doing some, very, very loose continuity with those two. And that one, those are always pretty fun. But yeah, so I mean, definitely worth just kind of watching when you have the time. And um, yeah, the only one that the smart appliances, stupid users or whatever it's called, is just so like I don't know. It's just so like trite and inane, and that's like the one episode this entire season that I would say just outright skip. If you
Mm.
don't want to devote the 6 minutes to watching it, but yeah.
Is that weird Chili Peppers puppet concert? Like why do that? What does that
I
have to
have
do
no
with
idea.
Love, Death, and Robots? Like that. That's one I definitely am. I don't know. I might watch it just for the sake of it, because Fincher is one of our preeminent music video directors, I suppose, because
Mhm.
that's essentially what it sounds like. It's just
It's
a
exactly what it is.
yeah,
Mhm.
and it's just funny that, because I don't know, after Secret Level, like I don't really care for, like, oh, we're just gonna throw some people in a gladiator arena. Like, how many times are we gonna see that kind of thing from
Mhm.
like these animated anthologies? I just need something a little different, I guess. Like that's what I'd prefer to see. And to be fair, there is some stuff in this trailer that I haven't seen yet that I do want to watch, because they do fit that bill. The But it's funny that all of this was born out of a failed attempt to make heavy metal with Fincher and Miller. Like that was the original intention. They wanted to do some kind of heavy, like modern heavy metal movie, and it failed. So they just said, "Fuck it, we're just gonna do our own thing," and it's cool, and I hope that they continue doing it. But yeah, they have to try a little harder probably if they want to keep it going. Moving on to some quick hits here. I was able to watch Companion, which is produced by Zach Kreger and a few other people who were behind Barbarian. And this movie was more interesting to me before I knew what it was about. The first trailer, where they just show that girl burning her hand, made me so intrigued. And I skipped like seeking it out. Like, I didn't see this in theaters because I found out, oh, it's just about a sex robot who starts killing people. Woo! Megan Fox made another movie like that. Like, it's like, like how unique could this really be? How exciting could it really be? And I watched it, and it was okay. Like, they do like make it very obvious what's going on before they outright say it. Like, if you had gone into
Mhm.
this movie cold without knowing anything about it, you maybe would have been a little like, oh, by the reveal. But the guy, like the boyfriend of the sex bot, literally calls her Beep Boop as a pet name. And there is like some subtle ways that the like other people at like this cabin retreat, or like this secluded mansion, I should call it, like behave towards her. Like, they give her funny looks, or like when she tries talking to them and engaging with them like a human would, they just like kind of brush her off and like don't respond with the same sincerity, because she's not a person to them. And like, so it's well made, and ultimately, like, what, like, like not to spoil it, but it's like basically this, like, a guy jailbreaks his sex bot and has nefarious reasons for doing it. And there's some interesting mechanics behind how these like sex bots work, because they aren't just in a relationship with a person, they are that person's slave. They have to listen to them generally. Like, but because she's jailbroken, her programming and her like need to like follow his every command isn't there. And that creates some interesting complications. And it's okay. It definitely has the vibe of like a small scale single location project, and it lives within its own rules, and it's fun, and it's incredibly violent. So, but it's okay. That's what I'll say about it.
Sure.
And you have been keeping up with The Last of Us because I have not. I stopped after episode 4.
Oh, okay, really? Okay.
As soon as we got to the "I'm gonna be a dad" scene, I
Oh,
was just
yeah.
like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I was at too with this. So as I guess as we film this, the finale is tomorrow, is Sunday, and I wanted to bring this up specifically right now because we got the penultimate episode of the season, and the last time we talked about this, I was kind of shitting all over it. I lamented how, this season it's been doing a bad job of capturing the feeling of the game, and things are filmed in such a strange order. Everything's out of order, and the things that they were adding to the show that aren't in the game were more subtractive than additive, in my opinion. And Bella Ramsey, it just really wasn't working for me as the older version of her character. And so that's kind of where I was at the last time we talked about this. But I do want to say, I want to give credit where credit is due. That the penultimate episode of the season, episode 6, was fantastic, absolutely exceptional. This is going to be the episode that they submit for the Emmys, all the Emmys. This is the episode that recaptured that lightning in a bottle that season 1, had. And I don't know if that feeling is going to be fleeting. We'll see. We'll see when the finale premieres tomorrow. But this episode was great. And what this episode basically is, it's a lot of flashbacks. And it's sort of flashing back to um, they use Ellie's birthday as a framing device for the episode, like her 16th birthday, her 17th birthday, her I think it's like her 19th birthday, and that's kind of what they use the episode or how they do the episode. And so it's a lot of flashbacks. You get a lot of Joel in this episode. But the centerpiece of this episode, and what is the centerpiece for the entire second game, everything hinges on this scene in the game and in the show. And it's this porch scene between Joel and Ellie, where she finally confronts him about what he did in the first season of the show and the first game. And that scene worked so well in both the game, and they did it. Like they made it work in the show. And both Ramsey and Pedro Pascal just put on an absolute like acting clinic, and it's fantastic. And so yeah, I just wanted to say that I would totally encourage you to like power through the fifth episode's fine, but I would totally encourage you to power through to get to this
Okay.
episode. And I would encourage anybody to do that. But as I said before, I don't know if this is a fleeting feeling. I don't know if this is going to extend to the finale episode of this season, but we'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's encouraging. I will try and pick it back up, I think, as soon as I'm able to. And yeah,
Oh, and
and
and Joey Pants is in this episode. Joey Pants has a little
no
bit
shit.
part. He plays Eugene,
Oh yeah.
Catherine O'Hara's dead husband, or
Okay.
dead husband in the present timeline. And so yeah, that's fun to see, Joe Pantoliano role in the year 2025.
No shit, because you don't see him that often these days.
No, not at
Like,
all.
like, just as a quick aside, because I have been watching Duster, not ready to like really get into it on the show,
Mhm.
but I watched the pilot, and I did see that there was this like cop character, and then I watched the second episode, and I realized, oh shit, that's Donald Logue. I don't even recognize the
Yeah.
fucker. How the hell did they do that? And so you got to love it when your boys come back,
Mhm.
whatever it is. And yeah, I guess my last quick hit here, I finally got to see Black Bag. It's one of my favorite movies of the year now. I
Yeah.
was so taken with it and everything that it was doing. And it, the Soderbergh is just a master, man. I don't know, like I think he's not quite like he's not like batting 1,000 in retirement, but if he can pop out like a movie this good randomly, like every 5 years or so, I think it's worth it. Because holy shit, did this movie just like work for me on every single level. I found the characters,
Yeah.
all the characters, like very interesting. I thought the performances were good, and the writing was just so clean from David Cope or Cape, obviously his name, and it's just funny that like this is the pairing that gives us the most like Jean Le Carre esque thing out there, that doesn't have any association with him, because this is right in like that wheelhouse, and I love that kind of thing. So really glad that you recommended it and that Peacock added it so relatively quickly so I could finally watch it, because oh my god, it's excellent stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so glad you watched it. And yeah, like I said in my intro, the best spy movie
Yeah.
that we're going to be talking about
This
this
is
week. And
yeah, because it's the complete opposite end of the spectrum here from what we're going to be talking about next in the featured review. Why don't you take it away, Matt? Bring us to our
yeah,
final
so
reckoning.
yeah. Oh man, I hate to say it, but I'm just going to come out and say it. This is my least favorite Mission Impossible movie. I think the general consensus is Mission Impossible 2 is the worst, which I think I would have agreed with before today. But Final Reckoning commits a bigger sin to me than being a bad movie, which Mission Impossible 2 is. And that sin is that it is dull. And I don't know, exposition in a Mission Impossible movie is to be expected. They always do, the team sitting around and talking about their plan and all the things that could go wrong that inevitably does go wrong. But the first hour of this movie is absurd with the amount of setup and the constant flashbacks, which I mean just should have been cut from the movie. Every single one of those flashbacks should have been cut from the movie, just whole cloth, because it makes you feel like the studio thinks you're an idiot. Like the audience is an idiot. Like that you can't remember these things that happened, in a movie that came out like 2 years ago, or you can't remember the most iconic scene in the Mission Impossible franchise, the scene in which, Ethan Hunt, um, is scaling into that CIA black site. That is the most iconic scene in the entire franchise. And the studio is sending the signal that, like, we need to show this in a flashback because they just think you're an idiot. And I hated it. I hated every single flashback in this movie. And, but beyond that, okay, so we get to the second hour of this movie. It finds its footing mostly due to some really, really great set pieces. I was, oh my God, I loved the submarine thing. We will talk about that. But despite being 8 movies deep, this series has always done a really good job of making the action feel fresh and inventive, despite the fact that it always kind of seems to fall into the same categories of like, plane action scene, helicopter action scene, underwater stunt, fist fight. It's always the same stuff, but they're always really good at making it feel inventive. And the finale of this movie and presumably this entire series is really just a rehash of Fallout. Like it hews way too closely to the end of Fallout, and that's something we'll get into a little bit more in the body of our review. But I'll kind of leave it there for now, and pass it off to you. What did you think?
Well, I think you're absolutely right about the absolute contempt for the memory and intuitive ability of that the studio has for the audience in this. Because there's a very revealing quote from McQuarrie, from an interview where he was talking about Easter eggs and fan service. I don't know if you've heard it, but he basically said you have to treat it like a very potent spice. A little
Mhm.
bit goes a long way, and you don't want to have to make something that relies on that. Like whether it's out of necessity or because of, contrivance, from outside studio influence, or because like I don't fault McQuarrie for the final product in that regard, just because I know that he at least purported to seem to understand the limitations and the consequences of doing what they fucking did here. Because it's like that first like intro sequence, we literally get a highlight reel of the whole series multiple times in this movie, and every single time it's relevant to the plot as you go further, it's a problem. But like, and like the Jim Phelps Jr. angle really could have been handled better. It just felt tacked on. But I was all fucking about them bringing William Don Lowe back. I don't like
Oh, really?
I thought that was a brilliant choice, because I think I had joked about that last time around with the first movie. It's like, are we gonna bring that dude back? He's gonna have some purpose, being put on that fucking radar station in Alaska by the end of the day. Just mail him his clothes. Like that, for that line from Kittredge is iconic to me, at least. And I appreciated that he had some sort of relevance. I didn't think he'd have so much screen time. I didn't think he'd literally get added to the team, but
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. Ooh, wow, bracelets.
Yeah,
But
see, I'm
yeah,
I'm inclined to agree with you, but I do think he should have been left. Him and his Inuit wife
yeah,
should have been left in Alaska. Like they should have, their screen time should have just ended there
we did
because,
not need him disarming a nuclear bomb. We didn't need that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and having to run to a bunker in 10 seconds. Yeah, that was, and that's, that goes into my main problem with this movie, that I realized something while watching, and it's that this is not the team that I wanted for this movie. This is not the IMF team that I wanted for this finale, because everything is about, Ethan, everything you've done has led to this, and this is the culmination of all your choices. And so it's never really bothered me in the previous movies how interchangeable Cruise seems to think a lot of the like minor, or a lot of the supporting characters are
yeah,
for these movies. Like he swaps people out just like crazy. And what I realized while watching this was I don't give a shit about Haley Atwell's character. I don't give a shit about Palm Clementief's character. I don't give a shit about the like CIA turncoat guy. And I don't give a shit about William Donlow and his wife. And I want I want the team that has been the team for like most of these movies. The team should have been Simon Pegg. It should have been Rebecca Ferguson. She never should have died.
agreed.
Biggest mistake of
Yeah,
this entire franchise was killing her. And the other character is presumably, if you keep Ving Rhames dead, if you still kill him off, the other member should have been Kittredge. And I don't care about these people that you literally introduced a movie ago, in the seventh movie of your 8 movie series. And even if you don't do exactly what I'm saying, bring back other characters. Bring back Michelle Monaghan. Bring back Vanessa Kirby. Bring back Sean Harris, the
yeah.
best villain that this series has ever seen. And yeah, it's just like I hate that Tom Cruise seems to think that he can just interchange, his revolving door of brunette women,
Yeah.
that people always talk about. I hate it. And so,
And
yeah.
where's Jeremy Renner? That
Yeah. Mhm.
I know that because of his mishap with his snow removal machinery, that maybe he's not quite fit enough for a movie like this, or something like that. But fuck, all he has to do is like stand around and say some lines and maybe shoot a gun, here and there. He like that if they, for a movie that was so concerned with connective tissue, that was a big problem. That the black dude that was a part of the team, I didn't even know his name. I don't think they ever
Yeah, me neither.
identified his character once, and he was such a I don't mean to any offense towards the guy. Like, this was a big deal that he got to be in this movie and he got as much face time as he did, but he was a waste of space that they could have plugged anybody into, and they could have I mean, fuck, why not put like Robin Thicke's ex-wife back in this? Because she was in the same
Yeah,
movie.
Paul Patton.
Paula Patton, bring her back. Like, there's so many people that would have had a more impactful presence. Like, fuck, even from Mission Impossible 3, is it John Reese or
Yeah, John Reese Myers.
John
Yeah.
Reese Myers? Bring him back. That would have been like a what the fuck, but okay, I could have rolled with it. He was at least someone I recognized and would have appreciated seeing around for the novelty of it. But yeah, the just a lot of missteps that made this plotting. And yeah, this is almost a 3-hour long movie that really only gets going, but like you pointed out, once he finally like makes his case to Madam President and gets airdropped into the ocean by some ospreys, and Trammell Tillman shows up. Because like
Yeah.
once this becomes like a, because and that's what I like, what I love about this series and these movies is that there's the central set piece before the finale set piece. Like, you get a lot for your money from these movies, and once it becomes this like really risky, like, he jumps into the ocean on faith, just hoping that they'll be there to pick him up, and then his whole plan is that, yeah, I just hope that everyone is magically where they need to be when I need them to be there. It's very contrived, but it's all based around the central theme of this movie being that it is written. Is so, like, the entity itself kind of alludes to this. It's like, I know exactly how this is going to work out. You're going to be my unwitting and unwilling warrior to help me secure my plans, even though you're working against them at the same time. And when he deep dives down to that submarine, and it just becomes this like mini abyss, like James Cameron movie. Holy shit! Like, that whole sequence was awesome. Like, and how it kept evolving too. The whole notion of it like slowly rolling towards the crevice, like the dimensionality of it, like it was very well thought out and executed. And yeah, I'm holding my breath right along with Cruise when he's on his way up to the surface and getting the bends. And I just think it was very funny that what saves him is the big heavies of Haley Atwell. Like that,
Oh yeah.
like
God. Yeah, the cleavage shot
yeah,
that was so gratuitous in the the hyperbaric chamber. Yeah.
especially in a theater, it was it,
Yeah,
it God
that
bless
whole
them for
sequence
doing it
though.
though. Like, like, thank
Oh
you.
yeah,
But
they knew what they were doing. Like, definitely. And that whole sequence though, yeah, just fantastic. Yeah, I said in our doc that when Trammell Tillman shows up, that's like literally the delineating line between like the like dull, boring part of this movie and like the okay, this is finally getting good part. And yeah, I loved him showing up. He was great in his role, probably the best comic relief of the movie. Katie O'Brien, I liked her
yeah,
little sort of her subplot. She's almost like that. She's almost like that James Cameron like woman character, like the buff woman that James Cameron always seems to have in his movies. Um, she was great, and yeah, and then just yeah, the whole subsequence. I just loved everything about it. The how he had to sort of maneuver around the subs as he was like going outside or going into the water, both of the American and the Russian sub, and then his slow dark descent and like the flares shooting out of his suit, and how he kind of had to flood the sub, and then that's what started the chain reaction of it rotating. And yeah, it was just so well done. And then, I mean, the best shot of the entire movie to me was the as he's sort of passing out and floating up to the ice at the end of that sequence, and the camera is like flipping 180 degrees, so it almost looks like it doesn't look like he's floating up. It looks like he's falling to like the ground
Yeah,
almost, and
yeah.
that was cool. And yeah, just fantastically well, the best part of the movie by far, in my opinion, other than the fact that I love this. Or my favorite like lore element of this movie is that they retroactively turned one of J.J. Abrams' stupid mystery box bullshit things into something that actually like makes sense, or something that actually has consequence now with
Yeah.
the rabbit's foot, because we never knew what that was in Mission Impossible 3. And now we do. We know what that is. And so yeah, I loved that aspect.
Well, let's dig into the whole the big bad of this, because I like when we reviewed Dead Reckoning, I joked that, or I guess commented, it wasn't really a joke, it was a sincere appreciation that like this is the closest we're gonna get to a Metal Gear Solid movie,
Mm.
with Dead Reckoning and Final Reckoning. For people who don't know, the whole like underlying overarching plot from like Metal Gear Solid 2 to like I guess 4 is that there's these like all-knowing AIs that have been created by the shadow governments of the world, and are they are like maneuvered themselves to where they control not only all the global economies but global war, like, and this is kind of speed runs that, because like this whole movie, if it has any theme, it's about why the whole mutually assured destruction model of peacekeeping, like this is kind of a sequel to Oppenheimer. Like this was the big, like the droplets in the water, all of the things blowing up, like that's kind of like what it's about. It's preaching to all the world very specifically. I appreciated that they actually identified each nuclear nation by its flag on its missile, like that kind of thing. And just kind of saying, guys, we need to chill the fuck out. We need to build a better world, because like at its core, unfortunately, every movie that Tom Cruise makes is implicitly a Scientology philosophy lesson,
Yeah.
and that was never more obvious than in like the speech that the speech that Luther gives at the end in his like like in his "this message will self-destruct in 5 seconds" spiel at the closing of the movie. But the entity itself is, they just didn't go far enough in like actually exploring the existential dread of a singularity like that. And like they hint at the cult, but every single time a quote unquote cult member rears their head, it's like, oh yeah, I forgot about that element of the story. They gave us the same two clips of people being like, the children of the atom will rise from the ashes, like the entity will save us all, like they didn't get into it enough to really explain why people fell into that belief, I think. Because
Yeah.
what it's supposed to be is that these are people who I guess agree with the entity that the human race just needs to be wiped out. Like where we are at developmentally as a species is just doomed for destruction. So we just need to speed run that so that we can start over and try again. And that's a very common trope. Usually it's like evil, cabals doing it, like in Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six novel who want to wipe out everyone with a virus, or like even the three body problem to a degree. You know, if you like with the human alliance with the aliens coming to subjugate us, that kind of a thing. And there just wasn't enough of that. And there really wasn't, like, they didn't explore just how like disruptive the entity's presence was in the world. It kind of just seems like everything's going on just fine, and it's just the governments who are freaking out because they're slowly losing control over their nukes. But
Hmm.
yeah, they give us little flashes of it, but they didn't quite give enough of it to make the gravity that everything is operating on actually like feel real.
Hmm.
It's in my opinion, because this movie is so weighed down. But then you're like left wondering, but like, why is it? Because we're just not getting enough of it. Because exposition is more important than showing us things, unfortunately. And yeah, because like they could have done all kinds of subtle stuff, like
Yeah.
at any because like we're still holding fucking galas in tuxedos at a time like this. Like, how come like there's not like rioting in the streets? Like they don't actually show us the unrest that would definitely be springing up all over the world if people knew that their country no longer had control over the nukes and Skynet did.
Hmm. Yeah, you bring up a good point because yeah, they should have showed all that stuff. They kept telling us what the stakes were, but not showing us or how big this situation was. And that kind of brings up one of the things that I thought about during this movie, where it's interesting that Dead Reckoning, the previous movie, was like the COVID movie, the movie that was filmed during COVID, and this one wasn't. This movie was filmed, I believe, in like late 2022, early 2023. So, all that stuff had, everything was pretty back to normal by then. And you would think it's the reverse because Dead Reckoning seemed so much more like populated as a movie and so much more like less dead, I
Yeah,
guess, for lack of a
yeah.
better word,
No,
where
you're right.
you had this crowded airport scene and this car chase in the middle of Rome and this Venice nightclub scene in Dead Reckoning and the train at the very end that had all these random extras on it and people. And in this movie, oftentimes, like Ethan's team, they're the only people at whatever location they're at, except for like maybe a couple of like faceless bad guy goons or a couple of like random, like military people, like military extras. But other than that, a lot of the locations just seem like dead. Like there's nobody there. And there is one point at which they attempt to like hand wave that away at the very end where they're like, they get to that vault and they're like, everybody's gone home. They know
Yeah,
what's happening. And
yeah.
so it's like, okay, well, but yeah, this movie seems strangely devoid of any people. And that was really weird.
And yeah, because I remember like the whole like PR spin behind Dead Reckoning was that Tom Cruise had to like literally himself make deals with different like nations so that the movie
Yeah.
could be made, and like he had to fight tooth and nail to make it happen. Steven Spielberg literally tells him to his face, "You saved Hollywood's ass." You know what I mean? And for to go from that to this, it's like they maybe were just trying to streamline and simplify the process. Like, we don't want to have a lot of extras. We want to like the stunts and the special effects and the all these sequences are going to be expensive enough. So let's not overcomplicate what we have to do here. We have to get a lot of different actors in this. We have to get a lot of names to just sit around in boardrooms and talk and say serious things to each other. Like it just didn't. There were parts of it that didn't feel like a Mission Impossible movie. Like
Mhm.
we like so because typically, at least in the ones that I really love, once you're on the mission, you're on the mission, and the outside world really doesn't get a lot of time. Yeah, you might have a flash, like a quick scene with Kittredge at the CIA reacting to what's being done, like that kind of a thing. But for like all of that cutting back and forth of like to all the different people who might be, involved in the larger story going on here, like that took me out of like the literal like fight for like survival that a lot of these people are going through. Like when you have like when they're in Kittredge, not Kittredge, when William Donlow's like radio survey hut and they're dealing with
Yeah.
the Spetsnaz guys and there's knife fights, and like bookshelves getting crashed on people, and it's cutting to Ethan fighting a cult member on the submarine, in his skivvies, like trying to, like not get killed at the same time, and everything's hanging by a thread. That stuff works. But and I understand that like that whole sequence where the president's being convinced that she not only needs to nuke all the other nuclear nations, she needs to sacrifice an American city along with it. Like that, of course, yeah, that's a pretty serious moment too. But it just took you out of all the other stakes and peril going on, and
Mhm.
that could have been alluded to, but we didn't need to have it front and center. Like the movie got too big after a while, which is
Yeah.
crazy
Mhm.
for a maximalist series like this.
Mhm. Yeah, it's the whole like joint chiefs of staff scenes. Like I appreciated that they got so many like acting heavyweights to do those little bit parts, but they were that was so strange. Like the weird Nick Offerman's weird little subplot, of like asking for the gun, and then you're like, oh, he's gonna betray the president. He's gonna make her press the button, and then instead it's like, oh, a cult member is actually gonna, betray her, and he's gonna die and have one of the worst, most sudden movie deaths since
Yeah.
Marion Cotillard in The Dark Knight Rises. But yeah, that was all that stuff was, very unnecessary, and um, yeah, just took away from the main the meat of the movie. And yeah, what do you make of? I'm just kind of curious. What do you make of the ending? Like, I mean, like the very very end where Tom Cruise is given the the entity in its like USB drive home, and like what is the message being sent there?
He's the only man in the whole world who can be trusted with something so powerful. Like,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
sort of what I thought too.
yeah.
Yeah, it's very weird because
No
especially
nation can be trusted. You know.
yeah,
Yeah.
especially considering that the scene he has in like the hyperbaric chamber with Haley Atwell when she first brings it up, and he's like, no, 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 like I can't. And then he basically accepts his role as the benevolent, the most benevolent person on the planet. Like literally, like I am the one person who can be trusted with this. That weird, really strange way to end the movie, I think.
Why not just destroy the little like quantum hard drive, the 5-dimensional crystal stick?
Yeah,
Why not just crush it into atoms? Like,
because you have to leave it open for the ninth movie
I
that will
suppose,
happen.
yeah.
Yeah, that will happen in 5 years or in 10 years when Cruise is 72. Because, that's the other thing, too, we have to bring up is that this is presumably the last movie, but uh, Cruise was very, very dodgy about a very point blank question he was asked at Cannes about whether or not this is actually the end. And yeah, he was like, "Oh, we're gonna let people enjoy this movie before, we're not gonna talk about that right now. So we'll see."
Well, I'm just gonna say this because, like, in like the last like shot of him, like the hero shot of him, just kind of like, yeah, we did it. Like before he walks off into the crowd, he looked so old.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
the guy needs to just accept with grace, that he now needs to think about making different kinds of movies because did not work. at the end
Mhm.
there. I can still believe it. He's obviously still in shape. He shows his body off a lot in this movie. But yeah, the time has come. Like, this is the last one. He will begin
Yeah.
entering, like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, Harrison Ford, Dial of Destiny, Harrison Ford territory, where it beggars belief. Like that
Mhm.
somebody that old could be that fit and able to do what he's doing. We need to find a different role for him in these movies in the future. He needs to become the Jim Phelps to a next
Yes.
generation. And I guess like that begs the question, who's it going to be? Who is worthy of replacing Tom Cruise in his franchise?
Oh God, I have no idea. I mean, I remember when Ghost Protocol came out, and they had Jeremy Renner in that sort of role, and there was a lot of talk around that time about him being that person. But obviously, I mean, that never happened, and that's not going to happen now that Jeremy Renner is also approaching, you know, I think like mid 50s or early 50s, I want to say.
Yeah,
And so, um, yeah, I have no idea who that would be. I mean, I guess maybe like God, I would have said someone like Cavill. I mean, I'm glad before he appeared in Fallout. I mean, he would have been a good guy, but I'm glad. I mean, we got him when we did because he is also one of the memorable villains of this series. But yeah, I have no idea. I mean, when I think about like the young, physically fit actors, like I don't know, like Glenn Powell comes to mind, I guess.
I guess.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
But how long can he stay in the role? And and who's like a true movie star, anymore? Like, no
Mhm.
one really is. Yeah, because you can't just put Timothy Chalamet in it. Like, he's just
No, no.
he's a string bean, and he's
Yeah.
probably above. Like, is this is being in a Mission Impossible movie as slumming it as a Marvel movie? Because he's from the DiCaprio groomed position of, you don't do that kind of shit. You want to be a little more considered with your career. Like, would that be a step in a direction he wouldn't want to go? Probably. And yeah, I can't. Besides Glenn Powell, I can't think of anybody else either. It's just
Well,
that thin out there.
I find it interesting that I don't know if you saw this, part of his press conference out of Cannes, but somebody asked him a question about because it's often said, like you said, that Tom Cruise is the last movie star. And he was asked a question about that. And Cruise, basically said like, "Oh, I hope I'm not the last movie star. Like, I want, people to continue like on this trajectory." And the one person that he used as an example, I found this really interesting, was I want actors like Michael B. Jordan to be able to be movie stars. I want actors like him to be able to, be people like me. And
Uh
so I
huh.
don't know, maybe that's a
That
possibility. Michael B. Jordan is,
Jeez, yeah, smart man. I feel bad that I
yeah.
didn't think of him. Because yeah, like
Hmm.
him or like John David Washington, for that matter, he could be
Hmm.
another. That mother, like, yeah, he was. Tenet was basically just a Christopher Nolan Mission Impossible movie. He could totally do it.
Yeah, it was.
That
Hmm.
man runs just as good as Cruise ever did. So I think, consider it. Everybody consider it. But
Yeah.
I guess we're reaching the end here.
Yeah.
What is your final ranking of all of the Mission Impossible movies?
Well, yeah, I mean, like everybody, you kind of have to acknowledge that Fallout is the best. It's just the best of the best. It's just the series firing on all cylinders. It was when sort of McQuarrie found his groove, in being sort of the second creative force along with Cruise in this series. And then I would probably say, Ghost Protocol was the movie that laid the groundwork for where this series was going to go. And then yeah, Rogue Nation, Mission Impossible 1, really really loved I mean, Mission Impossible 1 is such a different movie
Oh
than
yeah.
any other movie in this, but yeah, it's still amazing. And then yeah, and then Dead Reckoning, 3, 2, and then this brings up the rear, unfortunately. This
Yeah.
is they did not end it well. They did not do it justice for a 30-year-old series, but the cap that I will put on it, the cap that I'll put on everything we've been talking about is that all of these movies are great. All of these movies are worth watching. All of these movies are at least entertaining, even when you get down to, Mission Impossible 2
Yeah.
and this movie. They are all a good time at the movies. They are all exactly what Tom Cruise, promises you. What he says, like, I make this movie for all of you. And, he's right when he says that. And so, um, I would watch, yeah, any of them again. This one I probably need to give a couple years before I want to watch again, but yeah, I would put that caveat on it. But yeah, what about you?
See, I would put Mission Impossible 1 right behind Fallout just because like
Mm,
it's the connective tissue to the TV show if there is any that the movie franchise has. And also just because it's fucking Brian De Palma, and it's
yeah.
the essence that like fertilized the soil that all the other movies grew out of, and it's the one I've seen the most. I have the deepest relationship with it because like we had this on VHS and I watched it constantly when I was a kid, so like I've internalized that movie a lot. And then Ghost Protocol, Rogue Nation, Dead Reckoning 1 ahead of like Mission Impossible 3 and 2. Like 3 is diminished quite a bit for me. Like now that I know what the rabbit's foot is. You know what I mean? And I just have J.J. Abrams complete fatigue. But yeah, Mission Impossible 2, so bad it's good to a degree. It's just so
Mm.
silly, and stupid, and it's a John Woo movie. We can't expect it to be better than some of the others on this list. And I agree. They screwed the pooch. Final Reckoning should have been more precise in its attack and not gotten so sprawling and like way too spread out. But ultimately, worth your time, worth a trip to the movies, and hopefully everybody goes and sees it so that it doesn't tank at the box office or something. God forbid. I don't think it's going to do that. But but yeah, let's move on to the mentionable. You went to a fun little festival or like a competition. Tell us about that?
Yeah, so this week I went to a hot sauce tasting competition. It was just held at like a local brewery. I think it was 16 different like hot sauce companies from this general Minneapolis area. All were there.
There's that
You
many?
kind of walk. Yeah. Oh yeah. There's a ton. Yeah. There's so many. So many. I mean, people kind of use it as. I think a lot of people use it as like their side hustle. They make hot sauce. Small batch hot sauce, and so um, you kind of walked around to various tents and just tried different hot sauces on chips or crackers, whatever, and then you got to vote at the end of it. And I will say, after trying them all, uh, the one that won out to me was, I'll give this little company a shout out. The company's called Nuanced, and it was their blood orange barbecue hot sauce.
Interesting.
And I actually bought a bottle of this, off of them there because I thought it was so great. And you can go online and buy this. They have a website. Yeah, go ahead and buy this if you want. But yeah, this is a great hot sauce. They say it says on the bottle this is best used for something like chicken or like poultry products, basically. If you're making some chicken wings, making some roasted chicken, whatever. And so yeah, that's kind of the best one that I tried in my opinion. But yeah, there was a ton of them there and a lot of unique stuff. And so yeah, go check it out. Nuanced hot sauce. is the name if you want to Google him.
Interesting. Yeah, like I've been out of the hot sauce game for a while. I really like Secret Aardvark. That was one like I actually like
Mm.
bought online because I couldn't find it in stores. So I'm interested. I'll have to, with barbecue season finally here, I'll have to
Yeah.
get in on that. And of course, my mentionable is that I became Charles Grodin over Mother's Day weekend. Um, Angie, you know, found a listing for some Saint Bernard puppies in New Rockford, North Dakota. So we talked about it. We tried to grapple with the reality of what having a like 170-pound dog would, you know, would would be like. But this is Maggie. I drove over there and picked her up, and she's a little sweetheart right now. She poops and pees. Obviously, that's we usually get her outside. Sometimes it's a problem. She thinks Luca is another dog and not a person, so she plays with him like he's another dog, and that's kind of a problem because she's like, okay, yeah, I bite you, you bite me. Instead, she bites him and he cries, and it's a problem. But like play biting, it's like she's not trying to hurt him or nothing. But yeah,
Well, let me ask you
she's
this:
gonna be a
what?
monster dog. This is the last
Oh
time you'll
yeah.
see me hold her.
Well, I always got to ask, what's so the name Maggie? How did that come about? Is she named after someone or something, or did your kids come up with that, or did you come up with that? What's the
And
antithesis?
Angie picked it out because she just like it seemed like a sweet little name that like Luca could say, and he does. He can say
Mm,
he can say Maggie because I wanted Dolly, in honor of Dolly Parton, and November
okay.
wanted Elsa or like
Of
some
course, of course.
you
Yeah.
know, but yeah, Maggie's just a name. She just kind of seems like a Maggie, and she sometimes responds to it. She is a stubborn little dog. I'll say that. And so
Oh yeah,
it's
I
like
bet.
having a newborn. I'm not getting any sleep, and
Hmm.
this is we've made our choices. But like as soon as we like started talking about it, I just went back and I pulled up the scene from Beethoven's Second, where he finds out that they're hiding four puppies in the basement, and they have a family meeting, and he's like, "These are gonna be giant dogs, monster dogs. We can't have five of them." And I was just like, "Buddy, I finally get it." Like because you
Yeah.
get like I didn't get bullied. I like like we had Hank for way too brief of a time. It unfortunately didn't work out because he was a breed that is he has lots of like hyper aggressive tendencies that unfortunately materialized despite our best efforts. And we had just had Luca as a baby, and it just wasn't a safe situation. But she's
Yeah.
the despite being aggressive in her play, like she sleeps so much. She's a much more chilled out dog, and she's just a good hang. And the
Good.
kids are all
Yeah.
getting along well with her. And hopefully, once the shedding starts, I won't have to like take my computer into maintenance too often,
Mhm.
because the fans are clogged on the hair that she's going to be shedding. But November we'll have some fun things to do, like brush her and shit. I'll get more exercise because I need it, walking her. So it'll work out. It'll work out.
Yeah.
We love her, and she'll make some cameos, I'm sure. But
Mhm.
maybe a little less aggressive than Hank was,
Yeah.
because he disrupted a lot of shows, and she slept the whole time, just until just
Yeah.
now.
Awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, that's been our show for this week. Please check out everything we've talked about. Find your favorite local hot sauce. If you have a dog, take it for a walk. If you don't have one, really think about it. Really think about it so you're committed. It's like having a child, even though it's not one to one, but Jesus, the responsibility is the same. And we will see you in a couple weeks here, where we always say tentatively because we just don't know what's gonna fucking happen with my local AMC. but hopefully we'll be reviewing The Phoenician Scheme, the latest from Wes Anderson, which got peppered with some booze at Cannes, from what we've heard, despite some polite applause. But he looks to be up to his old tricks, and I guess we'll see what the outcome is. Maybe he'll redeem himself. But as always, thank you for watching, and thank you for joining me, Matt. Have a good couple weeks, everybody.
Yep. See ya.